Thank you, Gina. I knew Gina would have a little bit of entertainment for us. My name's Lewey, and I'm a believer. Hi, Lewey. And I struggle with addictions. I was I was raised in London, Ontario. I grew up in a Catholic family. I basically had a good family life. All my brothers and sisters were straight up A students. My parents were always good. I had parents that were they were the kindest people. They were always working hard. They had lots of good morals and values instilled in us, and we had everything we wanted in our life. I seemed to be the black sheep of the family, and I got out on my own. I like to do my own thing. I started drinking when I was 13. Drank for 20 years, and then I switched over to the hard stuff. I got married when I was 20. I had kids. I had a daughter when I met my wife. She already had a daughter, and then Anna came along, my daughter. Anna came along, and then Derek came along. When I was 29, we broke up. When my daughter turned 13, my wife dropped her off at my doorstep. And when she came over, she just had enough of her. So she gave me, my daughter, and said, take care of her and deal with her. So I had to take charge of my daughter's life. And she was already drinking. She was already running away from home. She had a lot of issues with her mother that she couldn't deal with. And then I had to deal with it. She started running away from home. She got into the harder drugs, and basically I had to do whatever I could to help her, and I did everything I could. We went to counseling together. We went to anger management together, but she kept running away from home. She, out of control. I couldn't do nothing with her. She wanted to do what she wanted to do. When I did all that for her, I started neglecting my son a little bit, and he kind of started, feeling left out, and he basically turned to crime and the same kind of lifestyle. So I had to deal with my two kids that way, and then I had to deal with my own addiction. I started getting into the drug scene. Hardcore is the best way to describe it. I had nothing in my life but drugs. That's all that mattered to me. I woke up in the morning, I needed to do drugs. It took all my pain away, took all my problems away. It made me feel good, and I had to do drugs all the time. I never did any crime until later in my drugging, and everything started going from bad to worse. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go and get my drugs, I'd do drugs, and I'd stay up for 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. I started getting into doing crime because I had to support my habit. I wrote off 4 vehicles in about 6 weeks while using drugs. I had more drugs on me than I needed after a while. I started selling drugs. I didn't have much else to do except go to work, pay a couple of my bills, and just keep drugging. As time went on, things got worse. I finally did end up doing some time in jail. It wasn't a very long bit, but I did do time in jail. I went up on like 14 charges. I was looking at a couple of years, but my lawyer found something in the disclosure that would get me off my trafficking charges, which brought my sentence down a little lower. So I did do time in jail. I always worked. I always had a vehicle. I always drove. And the worst thing about that was I didn't stop. I was doing drugs at work. I was stealing from work. I was stealing from companies. We would do smash and grabs, which is something that you drive up to a restaurant or a bank or a variety store, you smash the window, you run in, grab the cash register, grab the safe, grab the ATM machine, and we did that. And all our money went on drugs. That's all it was. My whole life was drugs. We didn't care about anything, My family, I neglected them. I stole from them. I lied to them. I lived in denial. When they thought I needed help, I always denied it. I told them I didn't do drugs. I wasn't a drug addict. That's what I told them, and I would tell them that while I was high. The worst thing for me, I think, was all the shame, all the guilt. My ex-wife used to call me and say, "Hey, your son broke into the school. He stole a car. He's in jail." Every time she called me, there was something my son did to go to jail. And one day she called me and she said, "Well, your son's in jail again." I said, "What did he do this time?" This time she paused. There was a bit of a pause, and something didn't sound right. And she started to cry a little bit, and I was wondering what she was going to say, and she said, "He's in jail for murder." Okay? I thought she was joking. I thought she was just, playing head games with me like she usually did. And I said, "What do you mean murder?" She said, "Well, he's in jail for murder." And by the time it finally sunk in, I was on my way to visit him, and yeah, he was in jail for murder, 17 years old. He was sentenced for murder, second-degree murder, sentenced to 25 years, and basically that was it. I didn't know what else to do, except all I could do now was go visit him. He went from London to the Kingston Pen. He spent 5 years there, and he's now in Warkworth. And he's basically there, and all I can do now is go visit him. So that was one of the traumas in my life. In my drugging, I'm not going to dwell on the drugging too much because I want to talk more about why I'm here and what's so positive in my life right now. I finally lost my job. I finally lost my car, went to jail. I pretty much had nothing again. I lost everything. Every time something like that happened, I thought that would be enough for me to quit, to stop doing drugs. But none of it stopped me. I just had to. I had no money now. I had to do whatever I had to do have my drugs for my addiction, and that was basically keep doing crime. That's all I could do. When I finally surrendered and turned everything over to God, I came clean with my family. When I told my family what I was up to and what my life was about, that's when I started really feeling emotional, and I finally had to put it out there to them. I told them everything I did, everything my life was about. I told them I was a drug addict. I told them I had to get into treatment. I had to do something to get out of that lifestyle. My mother was the only one that actually kept by me the whole time. My brothers and sisters did too, but they were sick and tired of everything. I started going to meetings. I started learning the Serenity Prayer, and as you've seen, I had to understand the Serenity Prayer. And when I read it, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. It was me. I couldn't change what I was like. I couldn't change the way my life went. The past is over. I can't change that, and the picture shows it. Then I had to understand the second part of the Serenity Prayer. The courage to change the things I can, and that was me. I had to change me. When I realized what the Serenity Prayer meant, I realized I had to change every single thing in my life, because every single thing I did in my life wasn't right. Everything I did in my life was bad. It was negative. It was evil. Call it working with the devil, walking with the devil. That's what I believe I was doing. If I couldn't turn my life and my will over to God, I didn't have any other hope. It was all I had, because my will didn't work. My will was exactly the opposite of God's will. And to me, God's will was plain and simple. Everything that's right, everything that's good, that's God's will. When I came to Brockville, I'd already went to one treatment center. I had 20 days clean before the first treatment center, and I came straight to Brockville. I didn't go back home and wait a day to get to Brockville. I went from that treatment center to the train station and came straight here. I couldn't go back to London. I couldn't go back to where my destruction. I couldn't go back to where, the train wreck is the way I like to describe it. I couldn't go back there. I had people back there that were ripping me off and stealing from me and taking advantage of me. It's a typical story. It happens when you have to live for your drugs. When you have to live just to get high. I knew I couldn't go back there, so I came to Brockville planning on staying in Brockville or somewhere else other than London. And as my journey started in Brockville, I came here on a Saturday. the next day, I came to celebrate life. Danny wasn't here. Danny was away. Pastor Kim was away. And I came in here pretty broken and just an emotional wreck. But I was feeling a little more freedom. I felt a little bit of hope because I didn't know anybody in town. I didn't want to know anybody. I didn't want to come here to make friends. I had long hair and a long goatee to scare people away because I didn't like people. I came here with the intention of just doing what I had to do and try to get back on my feet. One of the guys at the cottage said, "Hey, I'm going to take you to celebrate life." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it's a church service and kind of like an AA meeting." And he took me here. I came here, sat down, and I had a spiritual awakening while I was here that night. And the funny thing was, Tom came up and opened with prayer and everything, and he had his vest on. And I thought, this must be the pastor. I didn't know. I had no idea. And I thought, what kind of church is this? And he started speaking, and it kind of seemed like me, like kind of where I came from. And I thought, well, this guy's kind of cool. I'd like to listen to a pastor that, kind of has that rough look and everything. And I swear I thought Tom was a pastor. Then Pastor Dave came up, and he did his prayer and did communion. And I thought, wow, this is a pretty good church. And I had a spiritual awakening when I went to the prayer station and prayed. I prayed for my daughter. I prayed for my son. I left the church feeling refreshed, felt a little bit rejuvenated. And I had a little more hope. And then, then I had the chance to meet Danny. When Danny came back, Dave said, "Come on, I'm going to take you down to Wall Street Church. You're going to meet Danny." I said, "Who's Danny?" He said, "Oh, he works at the church. He's a sidewalk minister." And I didn't know he was joking around, but I thought, sidewalk minister, what are you talking about, So off we go. We were coming down. And here I thought I was going to come down to the church, and I thought for sure some crazy guy was going to come out of the alley and bash me over the head with a Bible and drag me into the church. I didn't know. I had no idea. The only thing that was wrong was he didn't bash me over the head with a Bible. But I got to know Danny pretty well after that, and we connected, and Danny was there in support and was there to help me out when I needed help, and I turned to him quite a bit. Since I came to Brockville, I had a couple of hernia operations. I came here at Holy Week, and Pastor Kim asked me and Eric to walk the cross. That was another spiritual awakening I had. All these things started happening based around the church. So I had hope that God may be able to help me with my problem. And I started feeling better. I started hanging around with people from the church. People started hearing my story a little bit here and there, and people accepted me. That was the part that I really enjoyed. People accepted me for who I was. They didn't judge me. As they got to know me, they were warm to me. They were friendly to me, and they accepted who I was for who I was. They knew I was a drug addict, or they knew I was in recovery, but they didn't judge me. They all smiled at me. They all said hi. They all shook my hand. They all said they were glad to see me every time I came to church. So I kept coming to church. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I forgot a couple of parts. The most important part, when I was in my addiction, I wanted to get clean and sober. And in December last year, I had an issue with my daughter. My daughter and I had a little argument about something that we didn't resolve. I went to resolve this issue, and my daughter was in the drug scene. She worked on the streets. She was a hustler, and we had an argument, and I told her, "I'm going to resolve this. I'll call you where I have to go to resolve this issue." When I called her on the phone to let her know it was taken care of, she I don't know, she got defensive, and she thought I was maybe doing something behind her back, or she didn't believe that I was doing what I told her I'd do. And the last thing my daughter said to me was, "Dad, you're being an asshole, and you're acting like a goof." And she didn't know what I was doing. She didn't realize I was trying to solve the problem. That was the last words I heard from my daughter. I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't call her for 5 days. She wouldn't answer her phone or her text. And there was something going on with her that why she wouldn't answer the phone. 5 days later, I was getting out of the shower in the morning, and I looked out the window, and I saw a police car sitting out there. The police car had no police officer in it, and I heard the doorbell ring, and I thought he was coming for me, and I thought, "Oh my God, what did I do now?" And I was kind of hiding. I didn't want to see what he wanted. Then I thought, I haven't done nothing. I haven't done anything to get in trouble for that I knew of. And something told me that I better answer the door. And I saw him walking back to his car, and I went to open the door, and the phone rang, and it was him calling me on his cell phone. And I just told him I just got out of the shower, and he said, I'm coming in. So he came up to the front door, and he opened the door and walked right in. And they don't normally do that. They're not allowed to do that. And I couldn't understand what was going on, but I felt something was wrong. I felt there was something more serious that he was there for. And he asked me to sit down on the couch. He removed a couple of butter knives off the coffee table and put them in the kitchen. And he sat down and he said, I have to talk to you about something. I have bad news for you. And I said, what? And I knew something right away. There was something really serious that he was going to tell me. And he said, your daughter, Anna, passed away. And I looked at him and I said, what? He said, yeah, she died this morning. And it didn't sink in for a second. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, she committed suicide. And then it hit me. And, that was the worst news I could have ever wanted to hear. I was waiting to hear this news, but I wasn't expecting her to ever kill herself. I mean, she tried before, as she was reaching out. She just wanted attention. She was a cutter. She would cut her wrists all the way up to her shoulder when she was a kid for attention. But she was always in pain. She always had a lot of misery in her life. She never wanted to get help. She wanted to live the lifestyle she lived no matter what I did. I went to the hospital with her, I would say probably 12 times because she OD'd on booze or dope or whatever. And she'd be in there. I'd be sitting there waiting for the doctors to say she could go. Sometimes it was a day and a half, and she'd come out of it, and I'd take her home or take her out of there, and then she'd tell me to give her a ride somewhere. And she'd go right back and do the same thing she did to get herself in the hospital. And I did that quite often, but I always went there when she was in the hospital. It was always the police that called because she'd either kick the doctors in the face or punch the bus driver in the face, and always get charged with assault or mischief or something. So it was pretty tough when she was going through those phases. But when it finally sunk in about 5 minutes after the officer told me that she committed suicide, I started to cry. I started to really feel sick to my stomach. I didn't really know what else to do, but I knew he was serious. And he said that she was at her boyfriend's house. I called my sister right away, and she took me over there. She took me over there. I was still kind of in shock, and I cried for about a half an hour, and then I went over and sat in the driveway for a minute, and her boyfriend was in the house, and his sister came and ran out and grabbed me and dragged me in the house and said, you have to come in and talk to Neil. This guy was so devastated because he was the love of his life. She was all he ever wanted, and they were identical. My daughter was bipolar, ADHD, very, very hyperactive kid, full of energy. She had more energy than the sun. She never stopped. And this guy was so in love with her that he was crushed. He was totally crushed. He didn't know how to react except cry. He cried for 5 days and nights. When he finally had time to tell me what happened, which was about 3 days after, I stayed with him for 5 days. I didn't leave his side because he was a wreck. He was crying by the door of the bedroom where she was found, with his head down and screaming her name and just crying and screaming her name. And I never seen anything like that. I knew he loved my daughter more than anything, and I could feel it every time I was with them. And when he told me how he found her, this part was pretty devastating for me because it happened the 20th of December. It was 5 days before Christmas, and he said he went to open the door to see where she was because she wasn't in the living room, and the door was locked. So he pried the door open, and he felt weight on the back of the door, and it was hard to open. So he opened the door, and as he turned and looked behind the door, she was looking his way with her eyes open, and she was blue. And that image sticks to me now still. At Christmas morning, I woke up. I lived at my dad's. Christmas morning, I woke up, and right out of a dead sleep, I woke up, and I could see my daughter staring at me from the ceiling, looking down at me, with her eyes open, and she was blue, just the way he described it to me. That's how I woke up Christmas morning. I left after that. I didn't call my family. I didn't call anybody. I just left. I got on my bike, and I put my knapsack on, and I left. I just went for a bike ride, and I had drugs on me, and so I was good for that. I used that day. I used every day after that. Anyways, I had to. I didn't cry for 5 days after that. I didn't grieve or cry because I was worried about her boyfriend. He was falling apart. He was losing it. Like he was completely a mess. I didn't know what to do except stay with him to make sure he didn't try killing himself or something. I didn't know what he was capable of. But Christmas Eve, he dropped me off, and I left him. And then I started grieving. That's when the pain really hit me. That's when I cried. I cried for days and days, off and on. I had stints of grieving and crying, and then the guilt. Then I really felt guilt. I felt guilt in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't, I couldn't vomit. I was dry heaving because of the guilt, and just, I felt the guilt because we didn't resolve our argument like we always did. We always made amends. We always made up for all our disagreements and everything, and we didn't this time, and I never will be able to, except when I pray. So, and the thing with that, I've talked to Pastor Dave about it. Pastor Dave told me that I have to, and I didn't know what to do because everyone and their mother told me, you have to accept it. She's gone. There's nothing you can do, and I know that. I'm not a dumb person, and I know that. But they don't. People couldn't feel the guilt that I had. And Pastor Dave finally told me. He said, "You know what, Lewey?" He said, "You have to forgive yourself. If you forgive yourself, you'll probably start to feel better." And I did, and I prayed, and we prayed. And you know what? No matter what, I still have that little bit of guilt. It's that bit of guilt. I know it wasn't my fault. I know I didn't. It wasn't me that was the cause of her committing suicide. But I still have that in the pit of my stomach. I still have that little bit that I think that it could have been. It might have had something to do with me. But I have to move on. I can't. She's gone, but I know she's at peace. Anyways, back to Brockville. I didn't want to dwell too much on that because my life right now is here in Brockville. My life right now is with the church. My life right now is with positive people. I don't associate with negative people at all. Negative people in my life are just bad, and I don't need that in my life. I find positive people at the church. When I volunteer at the dinner like this afternoon, we had a great time. There was so much. We have so much fun serving food and clearing tables and laughing and just having a good time. And the people that help at the dinners, they know. And it just brings me joy. Once a month or twice a month, whenever it is, I go to Loaves and Fishes and I volunteer there, and I love it. I have more fun there than I do anywhere else, and anyone else I hang around with. I get more out of that than some meetings I go to. Some of the things I've done that are positive in Brockville. I was baptized twice. I've been in the newspaper twice and told my story a couple of times. Things that are positive. And when I tell my story, it helps me feel good. It helps me cleanse myself a bit. I was baptized here at church. I was also immersed in the river, and I had the full immersion, which I recommend to anybody. Some of the people that were with me, Tony, Cindy, and Shelley, and anyone else. I know when I was immersed in the water, it was weird because when I came up out of the water, it was like I was coming into a new planet. I was somewhere else, and I recommend it to anyone. It's very cleansing, and it's very spiritual. I started going to the races with Danny, which I had a great time, and getting away from Brockville for a night and enjoying the races. And I always felt like I was in the passenger seat because I videotaped the races. I was there when he won his first feature race ever in 5 years. I got our picture taken in pit road, and that was, to me, that was positive. That was fun, and we were clean. We were clean and sober, And I had more fun doing stuff like that than when I was drugging, and I can honestly say that it was fun. And he won another one, so we got our picture taken on the start-finish line, And I've got those pictures laminated, and those are highlights of my life that I'll never forget. Everything else that happens, if I keep doing good things happen, and good things are happening. Good things are all around me as long as I keep positive and stay with positive people. Pastor Stewart, I get a little bit of inspiration from him just looking at watching him smile when he works with the kids on Sunday. And we have a bit of a connection too. We both share the same nickname, right? My nickname's Butch, and Butch's nickname is Butch too. We have the same, we have a connection, you know, and all these little connections I have are positive, and that's what's keeping me clean and sober. My story is called The Courage to Change. I look at kids like Carly Ann, she reminds me of my daughter. When she dyes her hair purple, that's stuff my daughter would have done, you know. When I look at Pastor Kim's son, Stanley, you want to talk about courage, here's a kid who's never played hockey in his life, on ice, putting skates on and playing pee-wee hockey without ever playing before. You know, he may not be the fastest guy in the team, and he's not. He doesn't know how to stop very good. You know, but he gets out on the ice, and he plays the whole time, the whole hour and a half practice, and he doesn't stop. He tries to go after the puck, and he knows how to play his positions. And I look at that kid going on the ice, and the courage that he has gives me courage. It inspires me to do another day clean, you know, one more day to go, and I can try that again tomorrow. But I get inspiration from that. The kids, the people at Loaves of Fishes, the people that come to the dinners that you know, they all have some kind of a disability or problems in their life, but they come to eat, to have fellowship, and they're positive people. And those are the people I want to be around. I asked Pastor Kim one day in the prayer station, here's another spiritual awakening for you. I asked her to pray for my daughter, and I wanted to know, somehow find out and know that she's at peace. And Pastor Kim prayed with me, and she said, you know, dear Lord, give Lewey a sign, let him know, give him some way of knowing that his daughter's at peace. Give him a sign of some kind, whenever that may be, but let him know so he knows in his heart that she's at peace. And Pastor Kim's daughter, not Carly Ann, Anna, same as Ann, my baby, Anna Banana, we're sitting at the back of the church at the sanctuary a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And, you know, I didn't know Anna very well. You know, I talked to her, said hi to her, and, you know, she spoke here talking about fear, you know. Again, another thing that a teenage kid did that showed me courage, that inspired me. But she sat at the back of that sanctuary, and she looked at me, and she said, Lewey, I'm really proud of you. I looked at her, and I went, what? She said, I'm really proud of you. I'm really, really happy to see how good you're doing. And you know what? I'm really proud of you. I have no idea where that came from. When I left the church, I stopped right just before I got to the street over here, and I stopped and I thought about that. And I know that was my daughter speaking through her. I know that was my daughter letting me know that she's okay and that she is proud of me. And that if I can't stay clean and sober, because, you know, with that spiritual awakening, nothing else will keep me clean and sober. I believe that was a sign from my baby and from God, and I can live with that. I can feel good about that, knowing now that she is at peace. And my tattoos are all about my kids and my recovery. You know, my daughter's portrait it says peace, and it has a date of her death. Now I know she's at peace, so I can say that tattoo's accurate. And my son, he's in jail, and his tattoo is about hope. I know he'll get out of jail someday, and hope is what I'm living on right now. I know there's hope for me. I got a stone today that says hope on it, and I had to hang on to it today because I was a little nervous when I came up here. I have a lot of hope now. I have a lot of people that are around me that are encouraging me and giving me strength, and I need that. I need positive people. I'm a loner. I don't do much with anybody. I have a couple of friends, and that's all I really need. You know, if I have, like somebody told me once, if I have 5 friends, if I have a handful of friends, I'm blessed, and I think that's all I need. The song that I chose at the beginning, Cemetery Gates, was my daughter and I's favorite song, and it pretty much tells my story in a nutshell, but I thought that was very appropriate to play. And my closing song, which I'm going to close with right now, is for a special person in my life that inspires me every day now. Somebody that I see strength in, I see a lot of compassion and faith. So with that, I'm going to close and thank everybody for coming and listening. Thank you.